G'day guys, welcome back to the channel. It is morning here, Tuesday morning here in Paris. I'm smashing through the coffee because for all those who have 2-year-old kids, yeah, I didn't have a good sleep last night. So the coffee is needed this morning, but we have a lot of rugby to talk through. We have a South African Springbok team that was chosen yesterday or released yesterday by Rassie. He went early and there's a few interesting selections in that team to go through. Also want to have a look at the All Blacks Lions game tonight, the All Blacks team for that, and what it means for the second test on Saturday. There's a couple of selection possibilities coming out of that test that needs to be talked through. So let's get into that and have a quick look at the news on this Tuesday morning. Guys, before we get into everything, if you do watch my videos and you're not yet subscribed, please consider subscribing. It's really going to help the channel grow. It really does help, as with the likes and the comments as well. But yeah, subscribing is really going to help my channel grow, and I want to continue to push and make this channel better. And the only way I can do that is by building up my subscriber base. So please subscribe if you like the content, and on the plus side, you will be notified every time I drop a new video. All right, let's just have a look at the news hitting the New Zealand Herald this morning, because there's a couple of interesting headlines. The first one here, the All Blacks, who is irrefutably the world's best midfielder. I mean, that is Jordie Barrett, isn't it? We don't need to click on that. He had such a good game on the weekend, 5 turnovers, I think about 10 or 12 tackles, which was a game high for everyone. He obviously had that try-saving tackle on or marks. But he's done that so many times now. You could have a good 2 to 3 minute highlights of Jordie Barrett try savers and just general weird shit that he does on a rugby pitch. He's incredible, right? And I remember 8 or 9 years ago, 10 years ago, I don't know how many years ago, but it was a fair few, and everyone was talking, well, not everyone, but there was a few comments made around Jordie Barrett. We're looking at the Barrett's brothers, and a lot of people saying that Jordie Barrett was the most skillful and potentially had the highest ceiling out of all the Barretts. And they were right, because look at him. He has, in my opinion, he is a better player than Beauden Barrett, who's probably the easiest one to compare him to because he is a back as well. But also even his brother, I think his brother, sorry, Scott, I think he is the number one Barrett in that family in terms of his rugby nous and just general rugby play. He is an absolute superstar. So yeah, that is true, I believe. Let's have a look around. What else have we got here? Rassie Erasmus has gone into his shell with changes for second test. Yeah, I mean, that is a bold call, right? I just find it a little bit interesting, Rassie Erasmus, and he named that first test team on the Thursday out of respect for the All Blacks. I'm not sure I believe that. He named so he normally names his team on a Monday, right? He named it on a Thursday out of respect for the All Blacks, which basically means he didn't want to mess around. I think it was all part of the mind games. It was exactly why he also wanted. He put on Instagram and asked all the fans at Ellis Park on the weekend to be quiet and respect the haka. I don't really believe. Why did he do that? I just don't think. Look, Rassie Erasmus is the greatest coach probably of all time. Now I'm happy to name him that. He has been incredible. He is an innovator. He's unbelievable. But I don't think we have to look at everything he does in this such a positive light. Oh, he's amazing. He is he wants everyone to respect the All Blacks. I don't believe that. I think it's part of the mind games, and it's part of Rassie, what makes Rassie Rassie. So I don't believe all that. I just think, but I do believe that this team naming thing is a bit weird. He has now named his team on a Monday, but there are a few sort of question marks around that team in terms of like who is actually going to play, because Siya Kolisi is still bracketed there with Paul de Villiers. There's mention that Cheslin Colby obviously is supposedly missing the game. He's been replaced by Ethan Hooker, but Rassie has said that it might be a late change and Cheslin comes back in, and I think it's just more mind games with him. So I just don't know. I don't know what's going on here. But it's definitely something that we haven't seen from Rassie. I wouldn't go as far as saying he's rattled, but he is doing things that he wouldn't normally do, in my opinion. Um, so yeah, that is an interesting one. Um, the key moment when the All Blacks defused notorious Boks bomb squad. The key area where the Springboks will back themselves in the second test. I mean, for me, I think they back themselves in that in the kicking battle. When you look at that game on Saturday, they had 17 kicks against the All Blacks 18. And you look at how many of those contested balls did New Zealand not win. All right, they were probably retaining about 70% of their ball through kicks anyway. So, I mean, why you wouldn't go to that even more, especially at Cape Town with it's supposed to be wet weather. You've got Andre Pollard in the team. They are going to double down on that area. They're going to double down on going hard around the ruck, the edges with their big bomb squad that's going to be coming off the bench, which is even a bigger bomb than the one that they unleashed against the All Blacks in the second half in the first test. So, yeah, I think they're going to double down on everything, as Rennie has stated as well. They're going to make it tighter. They are going to look to kick. They're going to take their 3 points, probably a couple of drop goals. You never know. So I think that is where they will back themselves in the second test, and also just not to make silly errors, right? A lot of what the Springboks did on the weekend can be put down to rustiness or just dumb errors. Now, that's not to say that All Blacks defense didn't cause a lot of pressure and cause them to do that as well. So it's going to be interesting, but I think a lot of what they had trouble with on the weekend is fixable. But as is the same with the All Blacks, right? They can fix their line out. They should be able to fix their scrum. And that they lost what 3 or 4 lineouts. They lost 3 or 4 scrums. So you fix that, you're retaining probably 50% more ball. So both teams can improve, so it's going to be interesting. Richie Mo'unga starts in comeback match for the All Blacks. Yes, he does. We're going to have a look at that team shortly, but he is the 10. It's going to be really interesting to see how he goes. We need to see a good game from him. We do. He needs a good game because, there's every chance that when Rennie goes to freshen up this test team, not for next week, not for Saturday, but for test 3 and test 4, there's every chance that Richie Mo'unga is going to be there or thereabouts. And then we'll see, I see people talk about the fact that, currently the All Blacks play Ruben Love at 10 and they have David McKenzie at 15. Now, for me, that's a ploy by Rennie to get the most impact off his bench. It's not because we don't have a number 10 that is good enough to back up, right? Which I've seen mentioned. But I guess if Richie Mo'unga, if they do open up a bench spot for Richie Mo'unga after Test 2, then maybe we have to rethink that one. But yeah, that's going to be interesting. How the All Blacks are turning kicking from a liability into a weapon. I don't know about this one. I'll tell you what they are doing though, and I actually saw something interesting mentioned on X about it. The Boks. I saw it mentioned that the Boks might have been kicking their box kicks slightly shorter to prevent the All Blacks tracking back style of catching from really having an emphasis, or it's a lot harder to track back when the ball has just gone basically straight up. Obviously, you want to be making meters off that box kick, but if you're having to track back 5 or 10 meters, you're not seeing a huge benefit from that tracking back. So that is one way the Boks might have looked to nullify that. But at the same time, when you do put up box kicks that short, you do bring a lot of messiness into a play. There's a lot of players around in that area, so retaining the ball in that situation surely is not as high as what it would be if the box kick was 20 or 30 meters. Anyway, I don't know, but the All Blacks have definitely got some improvements around there in the last year. Yeah, Neil Barnes, have you ever poked a bear before? They're all expecting a bounce back, a big bounced back from South Africa, as we all are. So that's nice to see that they're expecting an absolute backlash. Uh, yeah, I'm savouring every moment. Moinga says, this was an interesting one because so far, I know I'd been quite vocal on this. Like, I didn't really. All I'd seen from Mo'unga before he came back to New Zealand, when people asked him about it, was that he said that he wanted to play at a World Cup, and so he had to come back to New Zealand. But there was not a lot of mention about the All Blacks and playing for the black jersey or playing for his country again. But in his pre-game interview yesterday, they asked him about what made him want to come back and when did he realize that he wanted to, and he spoke a lot about the national anthem, and he was quite emotional hearing it, and he just really wants to get out there and play. um, he didn't want to have regrets of not playing in the black jersey again and for New Zealand, and he wanted to prove that he can still cut it at that level. So I quite like that. It did make me sort of a bit more in agreement that he is in this All Black squad. So yeah, I'm happy to see him go tonight, and hopefully he has a good game. That's pretty much it from the headlines on the Herald. Of what everyone is saying. I'm sure there'll be some more coming out in the next few days after this game tonight, but let's have a look at that game. Alrighty, so this is the team list for the game tonight against the Lions, or for this morning if you are in New Zealand. Siali Lawaki, Samsoni Tokiaho, Pasilio Tosi in the front row. Sam Derry, Tuipulotu, second row, Satiti Blackadder, Simisi Tuputailoa are your Lucy's. Noah Hotha makes his return for the All Blacks, his first game under Dave Rennie. Richie Mo'unga as well. All eyes on Richie Mo'unga tonight. Imoni Narawa and Fehi Whinianganofo are the wingers. The centre pairing of Timothy Tavatavanawai at 12 and Rico Ioane at 13, with Bowden Barrett at fullback. And the bench, Bradley Slater is in the middle of Ofatonga Fasi and Saula Mau in the front row. You've got Jamie Hanna there as locking cover. He is going to be key in this game, absolute key. Peter Larkeye, Kyle Preston, Josh Jacob, and Anton Leonard-Brown. So, where am I looking at this game? Well, I'm looking at all of them because what a team, first of all. This team has the potential to rack up the biggest score against a URC team. It is lethal, and all these guys, most of them have had some game time, so they're going to be ready to go from the first whistle, hopefully. It'd be interesting to see Siali Lawaki, Tosi, how they go, given the scrum issues on the weekend for the All Blacks. I don't think Siali Lawaki would be in reckoning for this team, for the All Blacks team, but maybe if he's just turns on an absolute blinder, Pasilio Tosi could be. Although he does have a bit of a mountain to climb with the likes of Lomax and Newell in front of him, so probably likely not. Talkiaho could come into the reckoning for game 3 and 4 for a little bit of a freshen up of the team. But where I see it being really interesting this evening is the second row. Sam Derry and Patrick Tuipulotu with Jamie Hanna on the bench, right? We've seen that the All Blacks have a big injury there. Josh Lord's been ruled out of next weekend's test already due to a head clash, which might actually rule out De Groot as well, although I haven't seen if that is the case. So with Lord out, Holland's going to be obviously one of your starting locks. Who's the other one? Is Tupuvai going to move from 6 into the second row, which, as we saw on the weekend, when he did move into that second row, the scrum actually did improve along with Bauer, but he was a big part of that as well in the second row. So maybe that's an option, but I think Rennie doesn't want to mess around too much with those types of things. I think he loves what Tupuvai gives him out on the flanks and his ball running ability. We saw them target those smaller wingers with Tupuvai and his ability to get his hands free and offload back in for Morby's try. So I think they will keep Tupuvai where he is. And that means that either Sam Derry or Patrick Tuipulotu is going to have to back up and probably start. Definitely start. So it'll be interesting to see what time Jamie Hanna comes on. I imagine one of Sam Derry or Patrick Tuipulotu will be getting a 30 or 40 minute shift. I honestly could see a 30-minute shift by one of them. wrap them up in cotton wool for the rest of the game, give them an early shower, and give them as much time to prepare for that test match as possible. With Jamie Hanna basically fresh off the plane, it's going to be a tough old shift for him, but he should be up for it. So that will be really interesting in the second row. You could see both. You could see Darry and Tuipulotu into that All Black team on the weekend. One of them in the starting team, one coming off the bench. They have a little bit more leeway given that there's no midweek game after this. It's the last one. So, every player that's playing today and Saturday will get, a full 7-day break after that. Anyway, moving on. The Lucy, Satiti, Blackadder, Simisi Tuputai Loa. Look, Simisi Tuputai Loa is the most, that's who we want to see, right? We want to see him do some Jasper VC shit, right? We want to see him with damaging ball running, targeting some of the smaller players in the team, the 10 or the 12, and just running through them. That's what we want to see because that's what Jasper VC did to the All Blacks on Saturday. So that would put him in good stead for potential inclusion in the All Black team for games 3 and 4. Satiti's been unlucky so far. He's, it's him and Peter Larkai sort of going for one spot. And I mean, Peter Larkai's been unlucky too, right? Even though he's been the one selected because he's only getting 5 minutes a game. So, a big performance from him might see him move on to the bench, but I'm not too sure. I don't know why you would change things for this weekend. I just don't see that many changes at all unless you have to. Ethan Blackadder is an interesting one because with Anton Segner injured, we don't know how long he's out for. A little niggle or something happens to Luke Jacobson, and I think we see Ethan Blackadder straight into the All Blacks 15. He is a like-for-like replacement for Luke Jacobson, in my opinion. And I think Rennie would do something like that instead of rejigging the Lucies to maybe move Savia. I mean, you could do that. You could move Savia to 7 and bring on Alakai at 8. But, with the height and that type of thing and the balance they've got going there at the moment, I think a like-for-like replacement there in terms of Blackadder would make a lot more sense. Into the back line, Hotham and Richie Mo'unga. That's going to be an interesting 9-10 partnership there. Both getting their first games for the All Blacks this year and first under Rennie. Again, we haven't seen Richie Mo'unga in an All Blacks jersey since the 2023 World Cup final. And him and Beauden Barrett were the 10-15 combo there. So that'll be an interesting one as well. The boys are a little bit older there, but it'll be interesting to see. Richie needs a big game. He needs to push his case, because Ruben Love's clearly the number one, and I don't think Richie can do much in this game to change that. But he puts himself in the conversation. You have a good game, and all of a sudden your second choice 10, you jump ahead of Josh Jacob and Beauden Barrett. He probably has already, but we haven't seen him play, so you can't really make that conclusion. And in the back line, I mean, Timothy Tavatavanau, Rieko Ioane, you're going to be excited to see them, and also Whinianganofo. I think all three of those guys. I mean, Rieko, it's touch and go whether he gets in over ALB on the bench, in my opinion. I think Rennie prefers Leonard Brown, but Rieko offers, a lot of impact off the bench. I think Timothy Tavatavanau is in the same sort of vein as Simisi Tuputai-Loa in the fact that he offers a point of difference. He offers something that South Africans haven't seen from us, and also it gives the All Blacks something that they don't have, which is like this, this strong ball carrying, ball pilfering number 12 who has all these loose forward sort of skill set. So it'd be interesting to see how he goes. Maybe we see him later in the test series. Maybe. Fehi Whinianganofo again is being held out of the test team from Leroy Carter, but I just think Fehi offers a point of difference there. Carter is a hard worker. He gets around the field. He is deceptively strong and good in the tackle, but Fehi Whinianganofo, I don't think he can really force his way into this All Black test team, especially this weekend with the wet weather. But if he just goes out there against the Lions and does what's expected of him, he definitely won't sort of crack that test team. But if he goes out there and does the things that are unexpected of him, like the really strong ball carrying, being able to break the line, bend the defensive line, beat the first tackler, makes a couple of line breaks, scores some tries, then he can push for inclusion. But if he's just going to finish off tries, and he needs to do more than that to get into this team. So, but yeah, I still think we'll see him in the test team at some point. Who else we got here on the bench? Bradley Slater, Tungafasi Sola Mau. Tungafasi, fresh off the plane, very experienced, good scrummager. Sola Mau with 140 kegs behind him will be an interesting one. I'm really excited to see how he goes. Jamie Hanna, we've already mentioned him. Peter Larkai, very unlucky this tour. He gets about 5 minutes off the bench for the test team, and then as he's in the test team, they don't start him in the midweek game, so he gets about 5 or 10 minutes off the bench in the midweek game as well. So tough times for Peter Larkai, but he's there and ready when he's needed. Kyle Preston, Josh Jacob, and Anton Leonard Brown round off the bench backs. But that's it. That's a team. As I've mentioned, it's an interesting one. It should put a lot of points on the Lions, but a lot of this, apart from the obvious injuries and the things around the locks, I think anyone in this team that pushes their case for test inclusion will potentially get a look. In test 3 and 4, not next Saturday. It's too short. It's too close. But test 3 and 4, if Rennie's looking to freshen things up, then a couple of these guys who have big games could push their case for it. So that's what's going to be interesting tonight, and that's what we should be watching out for, in my opinion.
Right, let's have a look at the Springboks team, which was named yesterday. Rassie Erasmus has gone early, as we all kind of thought that he might. He's gone back to the first weekend he wanted to give the All Blacks a respect, so he named their team on a Thursday, and this time he's gone early on a Monday. Although I find it a little bit odd because there are bracketed players and there are still some uncertainties. So Siya Khaleesi has been bracketed with Paul de Villiers there. Obviously, Siya Khaleesi being back for the Boks would be massive for them. Just huge boost for them, wouldn't it? Like your inspirational captain, being back for that game would just give you an extra level, you'd imagine. But yeah, that's still not necessarily confirmed. And then the other one, Colby, who's been replaced by Ethan Hooker, but I think Rassie did mention that there is potentially he could come back into that team if he gets better during the week. So I don't know. There's a few mind games going on with Rassie there. But yeah, the only real change in that starting 15, apart from the ones I've just mentioned, is Andre Pollard, the Iceman, the back-to-back World Cup winner, and he is just he's the guy you want there when you go back to proper South African DNA, proper South African rugby, and you start kicking the ball really. Um, it's supposed to be a wet day in Cape Town on Saturday, so you'd imagine there'll be a lot more kicking. You just got to look at the weekend when South Africa I think they had 17 kicks throughout that game, and New Zealand had 18. So New Zealand actually kicked more, which is surprising given how ropey the All Blacks looked under the high ball. So you'd imagine that South Africa's going to increase that to put real pressure on New Zealand, especially given the wet conditions. You'd imagine that they're going to take 3 points when it's on offer, because obviously Pollard can kick the three from almost anywhere on the field. And then maybe even a drop goal or two is not out of the question. So, yeah, I think we can all see what's going to be happening on the weekend. Just a couple of other things of note with that pack, especially on the bench, right? So your replacements, there are a few changes here, but the big one is, Sasha's moved to the bench, but in the forwards here, you've gotten Thomas du Toit, Lud de Jager, Cameron Hannekamp, and Dion Fury. So these guys, this is basically a proper bomb squad now, right? We saw on the weekend that the Boks did not get the impact that they wanted out of their bench, and this immediately looks like a hell of a lot stronger, right? All of them. Well, you look at Hannekamp, Du Toit, and De Jager, who are all very physical, very good ball carriers, right? So that is going to be another step up on that front. Dutoy and Jaeger also very good at set piece, right? Dutoy obviously a good scrummager, and then you've got Jaeger, who's great in the line out, just a workhorse. He's going to tackle himself to a standstill as well. And Hannacum, just a real ranging, ball running eight who will cause the All Blacks some problems. So those three guys, just add to the physicality that we saw from the Boks in the first game. And then you add in a guy like Dion Fury, who is a ball pilferer, to have him come on in the back end of a game. Traditionally at the end of a game when the All Blacks start to take hold or they start to push on a bit, um, he is going to be there to slow the ball down, to get his hands on it at the ruck and just be a menace at the breakdown. So, you can see what they're doing here. You can see that this team looks a lot more balanced, and the pack. I mean, their bomb squad coming off the bench looks like it's going to provide a lot more impact than what we saw on Saturday. So, yeah, that's the team there, and it's going to be interesting. There's not really a hell of a lot that All Blacks can do with their team, given that they've got this midweek game. They've only got 44 players on tour. You do not have the luxury of selecting guys who are fresh.
But that's it, guys. That is a little wrap up of the sporting news, or at least the All Blacks news on Tuesday morning. We wait until this evening when we see the Lions take on the All Blacks. And I'll be dropping another video later in the week to talk about, a little bit of a preview of the game, have a look over that All Blacks team, and if there are any sort of interesting selections that we didn't see coming. So have a good week, guys. As I mentioned before, please like and subscribe this video. Subscribing really helps the channel grow. Means I can do a lot more with my videos in the future. And as always, guys, keep the comments coming. Love interacting with all of you, and I'll see you in the next one.